Everybody, playing for that national championship tonight at 7. I'm actually headed out here to Kingston to show a house. So got a little windshield time before we watch the game, which, man, this will be huge for our area to bring this home. We really need this as Tennessee fans. But I wanted to take this video and let's talk a little bit about this whole lawsuit. I've done several videos on it, especially if you follow me, you've probably seen some. What I would say is I don't really have an update of facts because this thing's getting messy. And when I say getting messy, I mean getting really messy. Without getting into like too much real estate realtor terms and things that probably would confuse most people, I'm going to try to explain it as in English as best I can. But although there's a settlement that basically says sellers are no longer able to advertise that they are paying the buyer's and buyer's agent fee. They can no longer advertise that, which is how our market currently works, right? It's called a cooperating agreement, where the listing agent will basically, pay a certain percentage of that commission to the buyer's agent. Well, most companies are coming out and they don't want anything being talked about commission. It's a big hush-hush. They don't want it, and which really confuses me. I don't want to say confuses me. I understand it. I'm not in agreements with it. I think that should be something very transparent.
Keep right to
I think that should be something up front. And a lot of times when you do meet with the agent, that will be discussed and all that stuff up front. But you may not know until you call them, you talk to them, or you meet them for an appointment. But I think it's something that should be even more transparent. Right? You know what ABC agent is charging before you ever call them. Because that's going to benefit me, and that's going to benefit my team, because I know our fees are tremendously less than what I would say is kind of the average, which is what you see on TV they throw around, or less. But essentially we kind of have like I'll say a stop to really discuss the details on it. They really don't really want me talking about it in general, but I feel like you got to talk about it. Right? I mean, how can attorneys and all this stuff, I'm $350 an hour for this, right? Like, how come ours are? And the main reason is I think it's done there to give a competitive advantage to the people who are charging a bunch of fees, who are charging higher, because it gives them a chance to get in front of people. Whereas if it was all very transparent and people knew, and I'm not saying like, don't get me wrong, there's companies out there that would technically be cheaper than what I am, but they don't offer services, right? You're basically, sure, they'll do, all right, we're back. But they only do certain things for those fees, and whereas we're full service, right? We do everything, handle everything, there's nothing hidden. But they don't want us to talk about, which is fine. I think that's going to go away, or eventually, right? We're going to come up with ways to especially me, to get that information out to people, because again, right? I think it's. I do always encourage people to talk to multiple agents, and both on the buying and selling. You never hurt my feelings, but a lot of times the clients, consumers, wouldn't be talking to certain agents if they knew all their hidden fees, if they knew their business practices, they knew how they held the contracts together. They wouldn't even have the conversation. It would be like, it's probably a stupid example, right? But if you're not going to go in a jewelry store where everything is a minimum of $10,000 and you don't have $10,000 to spend, right? Why would you even go in there? You're not going to go in there. You're going to go into the store where you have things you can afford, or that seem financially reasonable to you. Because again, I think that would give me a huge advantage if we compared that, because I know what we offer for what we do, and I don't think there's anybody that comes close to offering what we offer for the pricing that we do. But so that's something they're talking about. Hey, keep this hush hush, blah blah. There's still a lot of moving pieces of like what happens if I got a contract today, but it doesn't close until September, right? Because all this changes August 17th. Well, what happens, right? We got to go back and amend it. But is that grandfathered in? They're dropping the ball. All sides are dropping the ball. You have MLSs, which is what we realtors use to post your house and market your house. And then all those websites like Zillow, they pull it from the MLS. That's how it's done. Well, you have MLSs now around the country saying, screw you, we're going to do, this is our First Amendment right for a seller to advertise that they want to pay a buyer's agent. Now you're taking away a First Amendment right. That's a big deal, huge deal. And again, I just know that they're saying we're not going to come after us if you want it. You want to go to court over the First Amendment. So it's interesting, right? Well, I mean, this whole thing again, it may all fall apart. And who knows what can kind of come of this, because now you even have certain companies, large companies that weren't a part. The Realty Executives who I'm with was not a part of the settlement because they're a huge company, and so we weren't a part. Now I don't know the details of what they've chosen to do, as you know, we're an independent agent, there. So it doesn't necessarily per se affect the independent agents. I'm not affected by it. But Realty Executives, brand and franchise part is, and I don't know the details of it, but I don't know if they end up paying to join or if they're going to try to fight it on their own. I think there's going to be more and more stuff coming out every week because there's so much gray. Like they've come out with this stuff, and sure, it looks good on paper. Again, we're talking government, so you're dealing with idiots. It looks good on paper to have this. Okay, it makes sense, right? However, real estate is complicated. I mean, think of every deal. Every deal you have, let's just say a buyer's agent, a selling agent. You're going to have a buyer and a seller, potential families, right? So you have multiple family, or family on each side. So you're already almost at 10 people. Now you have a title company, and then now you have the owner of the title company. Now you have the closer of the title company. Now you have the processors. You have the attorney of the title company. Now you have the lender. Now you have the lender's processor. Then you got an appraiser. Then you got an inspector. Like one real estate deal has 20 people involved in it, all trying to, let's just say accomplish the same thing of getting it to the closing table. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of weird things. And I think one of the biggest things that's going to happen is these buyers, right? So we work with a lot of first-time buyers. We work with a lot of what I would say is everyday blue-collar people. And they don't usually have money to even pay their own closing costs sometimes in the deal. So we have to work out and get a deal where the seller will pay their closing costs. And it's common right now in this market, so it's not a huge deal to do it. But now if they don't have money to pay their own closing costs, they dang sure don't have money to pay an agent. So now we're having to tack on, depending on the price point, again, I'm going to try to stay away from numbers as much as I can. So I'm just going to use easy number. We're just going to tack on our fees. Well, what happens if the home doesn't appraise? Meaning, easy numbers, right? They're buying the home for $100,000, but then the seller's giving, $10,000 back for fees and all that for the buyer to close. The buyer has to have that $10,000 closed. What happens if it comes back and the home only appraises for $90,000? Well, that seller's going to say, well, you know what? Sure, I'll lower it to $90,000, but I'm not going to pay that $10,000 extra. Well, now the buyer can no longer afford it. They had to have their closing cost. Also, the buyer is in a written agreement with a buyer's agent. Depending on that buyer's agent, I will say, depending on their level of greed and shadiness, that buyer's agent, can they sue the buyer? Because now the buyer's saying, well, I want the house, technically they can't afford it, but they just don't have enough money, let's say, to afford their agent. Well, they signed an agreement saying they're going to pay their agent. So now can their agent sue them? And I think that will happen. I think you're going to have so many buyers, especially on the buying side, you're going to have so many buyers, clients, and agents suing each other. And that whole side probably didn't really exist much of it. And that's going to create a whole new industry of attorneys and all that, right? I mean, this is all started by this group of greedy attorneys, essentially. But yeah, there's some crazy stuff that can come out of this. And I have to think about protecting us. Or I have to protect my team, my agents, right? To show you a house, part of this agreement, you got to sign a contract with me. Well, do I want to sign a contract with somebody pledging my services to where if I don't give them essentially that services, they can take legal action against me? Well, are they pre-approved? I don't know. What are they wanting? Are they unreasonable, right? Are they looking at $200,000 houses, but they only want to offer $100,000, and then they expect me to be this master negotiator to make that happen, and then they're pissed off at me, but then, they're signing a contract. I'm obligated to them. They want to see they want to see 10 houses a day for a month straight. Nobody can do that. But I'm obligated per that agreement to almost like try to do that. So yeah, very, very complicated. I listen to some YouTube, some podcasts, usually a couple times a week. And again, it's like, anything that kind of comes out in writing, they just pick it apart and they say, yeah, sure, like on paper, sure, it looks good. What about this scenario? What about this scenario? They have all these one-off scenarios that can and will and do happen in real estate all the time that we don't have answers for. And I think that's going to be the interesting part of when this all breaks down. Now, I will say this scenario, and I kind of what I'm telling our team, like, I'm excited. I think this will be good for us because I think a lot of people are, especially agents, are going to look on ways to make more. They're going to look for ways to charge more. They're going to look for ways to tack on fees. They're going to look for all kinds of stuff, because of greed. And we're going to go the opposite direction and still give the best service possible, but also be cheaper than what everybody else is. And therefore, like, that's what I told them, hey, listen, we're going to make less per deal than 98% of agents, right? That's how it is. However, we're going to do a lot more deals, right? Because people are going to come to us because they know they're not going to get screwed. They know they're going to get great service. Yet now, we have a huge team. We're adding some more agents to it, just due to pure demand. We have more phone calls and stuff than what we can. I've been running around like crazy. I've mentioned it in the last couple of videos, the last couple of weeks. It's always like, hey, well, you got to hire some new agents. And so we're in the process of doing that, which is great. But I think it's going to be, and again, good for us because honestly, we're just honest. And we're out here, doing it because we actually enjoy helping people, not doing it for the paycheck. Just so happens, again, what I'm saying, right? Helping enough people, the money does come. But yeah, figure out how to do that. This little video kind of give you an update, which is not really an update because we're still waiting to hear all the, like, what happens in all these scenarios. And I don't know if you can put these rules in place. So we're going to see. I think they got to get their crap together the next couple of weeks because, the documents are going to get redone. There's going to be new documents that didn't exist. New wording didn't exist. What happens if I have your listing now and we're still I hope for anybody selling, I hope to goodness we sell it before then, but just walking through a scenario, right? You're obligated to pay X% now. Well, what happens, I always do a 50-50 split on the, or pay the buyer's agent more, one of the two. It's either 50-50 or they get paid more than I do. So what happens when I'm no longer allowed to offer that? Can we put it in public remarks? Can we not? What's going to happen to the MLSs that aren't going to be a part of that? This is going to get messy. But again, I think there's a positive side for us because I think we're going to pivot, move on, and figure it out. And where a lot of people are just going to be complaining and pissed off, and then trying to charge more than what they should. So as always, y'all got questions, holler anytime.